Welcome to another episode of the On the Fly podcast. Today, we are joined by three of California's leading political journalists, and in alphabetical order. Marisa Lagos, senior political correspondent for KQED Radio in San Francisco and host of the Political Breakdown podcast. From LA, Melanie Mason, senior political reporter at Politico. And in Sacramento, Nikki Laurenzo, host and executive producer of Inside California Politics. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jot. This is like my
Okay.
favorite
Thanks for
group of
having us.
reporters.
Same here. Second, Marisa.
Okay, so the one question we have for each of you, and we'll just go in the order that I introduced you, is share your most memorable restaurant experience, Marisa.
Okay. I mean, most memorable. I'm just going to go with my most recent memorable one, if that works, because it's to shout out a brand new restaurant here in San Francisco. You might know Rich Table. They just opened a new bistro next door to their original restaurant. And I went last week, and it was just an incredible meal, really beautifully done, everything, great service. And like they were on day 7, which Jot, I know you know how hard it is to open up a restaurant. So like the fact that it was this seamless, beautiful meal, and like my litmus test these days is like, can I have found this somewhere else? And everything from like the crudo at the beginning with this amazing like Taiwanese chili sauce to the duck at the end, which was like their version of duck l'orange, was just totally unique. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
What Rich Table?
Rich Table Bistro. So they have Rich Table's their original. They have RT Rotisserie, and now they have RT Bistro.
Where
So
in the
check
city?
them all out.
Where in the?
That's like it's like Hayes Valley Civic Center, so pretty close to City Hall,
Okay.
and close to my other favorite restaurant, Zuni, which is always delicious as well.
All right, I'm writing that down. Make sure to remember. Okay, Melanie.
Okay, so this restaurant's not open anymore, so it can't be a restaurant wreck like Marisa's, but my very first job was at a restaurant. So I think that would be my memory. My core memory was working at Mario's Italian restaurant here in Los Angeles, which was owned by very dear friends of ours. And so they let me at 16 be a hostess at their location on the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. And it's just, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but I just really feel like everyone should work in a restaurant. It is the perfect sort of moment where you learn everything about relating to people, especially when you're a hostess on a busy location and trying to like stave off customers that want to get seated right now, and you still have to charm them. And my boss was the matriarch of the family, who was like the quintessential Italian nonna, and like the whole thing was just almost like out of Pleasantville of how family run and homey it was. So I miss it a lot. It is a core memory. It was nice to reflect on it because I hadn't thought about my days as a restaurant hostess in a really long time.
3 out of 5, I think the statistic, this was from several years back. I don't know if this is the case anymore because the youth unemployment first job thing is a challenge, but 3 out of 5 working adults several years back, their first job was in a restaurant.
I buy it. Yeah. And it was
Dishwasher.
I feel like all of my friends were also really jealous because it was really competitive when we were all younger, especially to find those summer jobs. And I had this like really good gig compared to folks who I think were doing the barista thing, which I also did. But yes, I definitely had the best like first job out of all of my friends.
Okay, before I go to Nikki, Marisa, did you ever work in a restaurant?
I worked in cafes. I did the barista thing, but my best high school job was at a hair salon. Also some great perks there.
Okay, last and certainly not least, because she also happens to be my wife, so I'm going to mind my P's and Q's here. Nikki Laurenzo.
Okay, so most memorable restaurant experience. So I had an answer, and then listening to you, Mel, I'm going to change mine. Maybe I'll just give 2 answers. So memorable meal, I'm going to shout out a restaurant here in Sacramento, Casa. I always think of, where we want to go is something we wouldn't make at home. And most often pizza is not something we're going to make at home, but I will say Jot does make really good pizza. So Casa here in Sacramento, they do a great wood fire pizza. They do this one with burrata that's amazing. They make their own dough, and it's a great neighborhood restaurant, so I love that. But also restaurant experience. I also worked in restaurants and cafes. My family owns an Italian restaurant growing up, and I'm sure there was a violation of some child labor laws, but it was in Miami, Florida, and it was also the 80s, so different time, different place. And at times I would help out if there were, someone called in sick or they were short staffed, and I was helping bus tables. I think I was 10 and seat people. And one of the servers was like, help me bring this cup of coffee over to a table. And I did. And it was the saucer, you have to like line up the saucer and the cup. And mine was off track. And I went to go like deliver it to the table, and I dumped it all over the man on the table in his lap and just burst into tears at the table. And he couldn't have been nicer, but that, like, scarred me for life. But I also agree with you, Melanie, that I think everybody should work in the service industry in some way, shape, or form because it teaches you a lot about people, and you can always tell when you're in a restaurant, people how they're treating the staff that they didn't work in a restaurant.
100%.
Totally.
Hey, and Nikki, for our viewers, I'm going to go around and ask Melanie and Marisa the same. How can our viewers watch your show? Where do they find you and when?
Okay, so the political show I host, Inside California Politics, airs statewide every weekend on all the Nexstar stations across the state. So if you're in LA, KTLA, San Francisco, Cron 4, if you're in San Diego, Fox 5, if you're in Bakersfield, KGET, the NBC, and if you're in Fresno, KC24, in Sacramento, which is my home station, it is on Fox 40.
Okay, Melanie, where can our viewers read your insightful writing?
So I'm at Politico. So first stop would be politico.com, which is our sort of main page where you're going to get all the coverage from, our folks in Washington, from our folks in New York, and all over the place. And California is actually like pretty well represented on our homepage, which is awesome. And that is free. Maybe you might have to enter an email address, but there's no paywall. There's also the California Playbook, which is a daily, actually twice daily newsletter that you can sign up for, which is sort of all things California politics. It is actually kind of my favorite thing to write for because you can be a little bit chattier, and like all the good gossip we actually just like put in Playbook. So it's really a must read. There's also a national Playbook, which is great, but the California one is like all California and it really gets into the good stuff. So if folks are interested in California politics, I recommend signing up for that. And then if you really want a gold star and you really want all of the like ins and outs of California policy, you could join Politico Pro as a subscriber. I am a political hack, so I write all the stuff that's for free. But our policy reporters who really know various policies are just following every twist and turn of legislation and regulation that's moving through Sacramento, and that's that Politico Pro.
Awesome. Well, and actually, for our confidential bulletin podcast that you will, all three of you will be on, that's what we're hoping to hear is the good political gossip. Marisa, where can our viewers find you on the dial?
Yeah, so if you're in Sacramento or San Francisco, you can get us on terrestrial radio, 88.5 in San Francisco and 89.3 North Highland, Sacramento. If you ever listen, you'll remember that. But yeah, our podcast is 3 days a week right now, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. You can find that in any podcast feed on our website, kqed.org, or, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the options. And we are going to be taking it next month to YouTube at least one day a week. So you can also see our faces, and likely Nikki and Melanie's as well, because they are guests on it. We do every Friday a roundtable with reporters usually and talk about kind of the news of the week. So definitely check that out. That is definitely our most gossipy show.
Awesome. Well, Marisa, Melanie, Nikki, thanks for joining us on the fly today. And to our listeners, you don't want to miss next week's episode where these three leading award-winning political journalists are going to give us the rundown on Gavin Newsome and the crowded field vying to replace him in the Capitol's corner office. And hopefully we'll hear some of that good gossip that Melanie talked about. Thanks for joining us.